Good evening. This meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wadawurrung people. We wish to acknowledge them as the traditional custodians and pay our respects to their elders past and present. And we extend that respect to all members of our community. And just a little bit from me, welcome everyone to Queenscliff, where if you want to live to be 100, this is where you should be, according to the Herald Sun in January. This week, The Age has told us that it's where you can find the cleanest beaches. And the Geelong Advertiser, not to be outdone, has said that it's one of the healthiest places to live in Australia. So, welcome councillors, welcome everybody. Councillor Gill? Oh, sorry, CEO Gill.
That would be a very significant career change, Mayor. But I do thank you for the opportunity just to take a moment to address that Councillor Grigau has said that he does not feel safe to attend tonight's meeting in person. I thank him for attending. I would like to say to Councillor Grigau and to all of the people in attendance tonight that I'm sorry that Councillor Grigau feels unsafe. And I'm sincerely sorry for anything that I did at the Ordinary Council meeting on the 11th of December 2024 that has contributed to him feeling unsafe. I think this should go without saying, but I think it's worth reiterating. I commit myself and my staff to working productively with Councillor Grigau and with all councillors. It really is my goal to ensure that Council is and remains a safe haven for all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, CEO. We have no apologies. All councillors are present. Do we have any conflict of interest disclosures? No, there are none. Officers? No, thank you. There's no leave of absence. We move to item 5. Public question time and the public question status update. At the ordinary meeting of Council on the 29th of January, 2 public questions were taken on notice. Please refer to adjunct 5.1 for the details. There are no public questions outstanding. Move on to 5.2 and we have 4 public questions this evening. Public question 1 is from Laurel Putland. Laurel writes, what is the Council's strategy moving forward for a more inclusive approach to any future signage or cultural heritage management plans regarding William Buckley's Cave? And then it says, please see attached correspondence. CEO, do you have a response, please?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. We're actually working on a cultural heritage management plan for the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve, and I think that will help guide any conversation that we may have in the future about recognition and signage.
Thank you. Public question 2 is from Lynn Walker. Is Lynn here? Lynn, would you like to ask the question? Happy for me to read it? Thank you. Recent media articles have indicated that the Queenscliff Council is considering withdrawing from G21. In comparison to other councils, our contribution to the operation of G21 is tiny. However, we are afforded the same benefits as councils contributing a far greater amount. Thus, the rationale for this move cannot be a financial one. What is the rationale leading to Council considering withdrawal from G21? And thank you, Lynn, for your question, and I'm happy to answer it. Council's been carefully considering all its memberships and subscriptions to external organisations. As part of this review, councillors have considered questions from community members about the value of each of those organisations, and they've looked at the time commitment required from the CEO, members of staff and councillors. Council has a number of things it wants to achieve in the borough, as we focus on tidying up the towns and improving the amenities. On balance, Council felt that the resources should be used closer to home. Naturally, Council will continue to meet with local members of Parliament to advocate for projects that benefit the whole community. And there are other avenues for advocacy that Council actively pursues and will continue to. Public question number 3 from David Kenwood. Okay, thank you. David's question is regarding the progress in establishing a trust for Ballara. Following the recent good news that Queenscliff residents have the cleanest beach in Port Phillip Bay, and Borough residents live 8 years longer than those in many other local government areas, there are also recent reports there has been some positive progress in respect of saving the large Ballara property in Old Point Lonsdale. Given the Borough has previously resolved to allocate $300,000 to conditionally support the establishment of a trust, can the Council update residents on any progress, including confirmation that the matter is now out of VCAT and there's a window of opportunity to resolve the sale and keep this important property intact? Government and private benefactor funding is progressing, with the federal government requesting evaluation. And should a trust be established, Deakin University will manage the property with possible public access to the grounds and gardens. CEO, a response please.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, and thank you, David, for your question. My understanding following discussions with representatives from the Ballara estate is as follows, and I'll repeat your points just to make it clearer. To the point that the matter is now out of VCAT and there is a window of opportunity to resolve the sale and keep this important property intact. It is true that all issues of substance have been resolved. There are some minor procedural issues that are in the course of being concluded. So there's been a settlement and they're now working through the conditions of that settlement. To the point that the government and private benefactor funding is progressing, with the federal government requesting a valuation. The Ballara representatives have advised the government of progress and asked them to commence evaluation. The family will also shortly commission evaluation as well. And to the final point, should a trust be established, Deakin University will manage the property with possible public access to grounds and gardens. So the advice from the Ballara representatives is that that is the intent, and the draft constitution for a company limited by guarantee Ballara Estate has been circulated, and the intention is that under the auspice of Deakin University, that company will be set up under the auspice of Deakin University, and the university has played an active part in the drafting of that constitution. Yep.
Thank you, CEO. Public question number 4 is from the QCA. David. Stormwater works undertaken in 2020 to 2021 to address King Street flooding issues were regarded by Council and its engineers as best practice flood mitigation. Over $1 million of government funding was granted, in addition to substantial Council funding to remove flooding problems and improve stormwater drainage. Since receiving the CEO response on 5th of December 2024 and contained in the December agenda, noting that Council officers were undertaking a further $6,000 of analysis and detailed design work on the ongoing flooding issues, can Council further update what do Council officers propose to do now, given all previous works and expenditures have failed to rectify the issue, and whether the Department of Transport has been advised by Council that it failed to achieve a key deliverable under that grant funding? CEO?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, David, for your question. You'll be pleased to hear, David, that the previous work was not a failure and has contributed to the management of storm events and will be a critical foundation for the additional works Council will undertake to manage the impact from increased intensity rainfall events in this location. In response to your questions, we've been working with the affected residents to develop a design response to minimise the impact of higher intensity rainfall events, which has now been signed off. We're now working through the procurement and the approvals process with DTP before undertaking the works in the first half of this year.
Thank you, CEO. Yes, QCA.
I ask what the costing is, or proposed costing for that?
I don't have that for you, no.
Not available.
And the fact that it wasn't a failure.
You're allowed one question of clarification.
Well,
right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Moving on to item 6, confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting. 6.1, the ordinary council meeting of 29th of January 2025. The recommendation is that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting on the 29th of January 2025 as distributed be confirmed as an accurate record. Do I have Councillor Monaghan, a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Cameron. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. 6.2, the ordinary council meeting on the 29th of January 2025, the confidential minutes. The recommendation is that the confidential minutes of the ordinary meeting of council on 29th of January 2025 as distributed be confirmed as an accurate record. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Tolhurst. Seconder? Thank you, Councillor Monaghan. All those in favour?
I have to abstain or something.
All right, thank you. Sorry about that. So that's 4 with 1 abstaining, Councillor Gregor. Okay, the record, item 7, the record of informal meetings of councillors. That's included in an adjunct to item 7. The recommendation.
Foreshadow a notice of motion for next month, March 2025 council meeting. I wish to foreshadow a notice of motion for the March 2025 council meeting regarding the adoption of a formal graffiti policy for the Borough of Queenscliff. Graffiti vandalism continues to be a concern for our community, affecting public spaces, private property and local businesses. In response, I'll be bringing forward a motion next month to formally adopt a structured graffiti policy outlining clear strategies for prevention, management and enforcement. This policy will focus on rapid removal, community engagement and deterrent measures to ensure Queenscliff remains a clean and welcoming environment. I will also encourage collaboration with local stakeholders, including Victoria Police, the property owners, and address graffiti proactively. I look forward to discussing this further in March and encourage my fellow councillors to consider their support for this initiative.
Thank you, Councillor Gregor.
May I ask a clarifying question? Councillor Gregor, you said a policy to be adopted in April, or are you simply foreshadowing the motion to embark on that process?
Adoption in March. Oh, sorry, so in March. No, you said April. Was it in March?
So you're seeking the policy to be developed? Sorry, I think I'm unclear.
I'll write a policy to present for a motion. Yes.
All right. Councillor Tolhurst, are you happy with that?
Sorry, it's not my common practice to know that a councillor individually writes a policy and presents it for adoption, but if that's, I just wanted to get the clarity of the motion, so thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Grigor and Councillor Tolhurst. Moving on to item 9, petitions and joint letters. None have been received. Moving to item 10, functions attended. The recommendation is that the functions attended report be received. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Tolhurst. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Any discussion? All those in favour? Unanimous? Thank you. Moving on to item 11. 11.1, the Chief Executive Officer Report for February 2025. We'll take it as read. The recommendation is that Council receives the CEO report for February 2025. Do we...
Sorry, Mayor, I'd like to move that Council note the Chief Executive report for February 2025 and also note that Council will receive a briefing in March to consider, I think it's actually April, pardon me, we'll receive a briefing in April to consider the management of Dog Beach erosion following the redirection of DECA funding to the Dog Beach access ramp.
Thank you. Councillor Tolhurst. Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Monaghan. All those in favour?
Sorry, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Now that we've got that on the table, that's okay. Thank you for this report. Great work on the beach matting. That's really exciting, and the progress on some of those deliverables that were in the motion, but also on generally repairs to beach access. It's fantastic. My question is around the consultation process ascribed for the community vision. This report specifically calls out residents and ratepayers, but the Local Government Act 2020 has a much broader definition, including traditional owners and people or bodies who conduct activities in the municipal district, and that definition then extends to an obligation to engage those people in both the vision and plan process. So I just wondered, will all of the municipal community, in line with that definition, be invited to participate in the review of our council vision, a community vision, and then the council plan?
So through you, Mayor, and thank you for your question, Councillor Tolhurst. So we're proposing to have consultation and engagement on a number of platforms, and some of those will be to write to all of our residents and ratepayers, but also we'll be putting notices out on our websites and our other media platforms, inviting people to make comment. And then we'll obviously bring the results to council for review.
Thank you. Well, yes, Councillor Monaghan, sorry.
Yep, I've just got a question for CEO, is just on the beach matting. What's the progress on the beach matting and the hold-up, and any idea when it will be finished, given it's 2 days of summer left? Thank you.
Yeah, so we are waiting till after summer. Through you, Mayor, we actually had Parks Victoria on site on Friday, and there's a lovely video that I can share with councillors of a little digger putting the sand down and getting the transition that I spoke about in the council report all sorted. The next step now is to get Service Stream down to roll out the mat and plug it. I've been advised that that will happen hopefully by the end of this week or early next week. But yes, it's moved a bit since I've written this report.
Thank you. Could we have a review of the motion as it stands? The management of the Dog Beach
because the funding has been approved from the Dog Beach fence to this current project.
Councillor Tolhurst, are you happy with that? All right, we've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you. Unanimous. Moving on to item 12, Heritage Planning and Infrastructure. The recommendation is that the planning permit activity report be received. Were there any questions or discussions surrounding this report?
Apologies. Sorry, there's been no update, which is probably not unexpected given, I guess, the complexity of that hearing. But as soon as it comes through, we will make that known.
Perhaps the better question was, do we have an anticipated timeline for hearing an update on that one?
The senior member didn't provide that at the hearing in terms of when they would deliver it, so... Yeah.
I have one more question, if that's okay, and that's around incorporation of the Bellarine Statement of Planning Policy, which is not totally removed from the prior question or the case at VCAT. Noting that the amendment C37 Quen is reliant on this, do we have any indicators on the timeframe at which that can be incorporated into the planning scheme?
Through you, Mayor, and thank you, Tim. We met with the outgoing Director of Planning, all the CEOs across the state, met with the outgoing Director of Planning last week in anticipation of some of the announcements that have come across the weekend. And I was lucky enough to be able to ask a question about the Dell, and we agreed that it's been off track and it's now going to be on track because the resources within the department can be spread back into the projects that have been put on hold as Plan Victoria was put together. So we're expecting something.
Is there money on the table to do it?
I don't think there's any money, but the Minister, my understanding is the Minister, the department is preparing a response to some questions from the Minister about the proposed ministerial amendment that will make the transformation to our scheme and Geelong's planning scheme for Bellarine.
And I had 3 questions, and I would like to get an update further to under consideration for 105 to 107 Point Lonsdale Road and 1 Simpson Street, for 42 Fallows Road and for 18 the Esplanade, please.
Thank you. And Tim, Simpson Street, my understanding is that there is a requirement for a cultural heritage management plan, as there were some significant groundworks to be undertaken for that development, and so the application has been put on hold as the applicant undertakes that project, and also the applicant, having received the objections, is working through potentially an updated design to try and respond to some of those. So when we say under consideration, what we probably should say is that it's subject to the assessment process, but at this point in time it's on hold. And that, in terms of 42 Fellows Road, it's a similar situation there, where we've done a formal request for information based on the design that's come through, and we've also forwarded the objections from the community to the applicant, and the applicant's working through both the objections in terms of a design response and the questions that have been asked by council officers to potentially amend the design. If it does get amended, that'll be sent out to all the objectors for comment, and then we will brief the councillors once we've gone through that process because of the number of objections that it has. And the Esplanade is going through a very similar process where we have objections. Those objections have been put to the applicant. We also have a number of questions from the council officers which have also been put, and they're away responding to those and preparing hopefully an amended design.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions or? All right, the motion was that the planning permit activity report be received. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Moving to item 12.2, the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve Project Update. The recommendation is that Council notes the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve Project Update for February 2025 and that it requests officers to bring future project update reports quarterly or as required. Do I have a mover for that motion? Councillor Cameron. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Monaghan. Do I have anyone to speak on this? Thank you. Councillor Tolhurst.
Thank you. Just a few questions. I wondered if alternate locations had been considered. I know this was a kind of a rebuild, but in noting the sensitivity of the ground on which it lies and the costs involved, if alternate sites or a move was actually considered for this piece of work?
Through you, Mayor, and can I just ask a clarification? When you mean alternative sites, you mean not on the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve, or? Well,
adjacent to, yeah. Close enough to, but not on the site it's in, if that would make the job any easier.
Yeah. No, there haven't been, because we were trying to do a renewal project, and just thinking through the different spaces around there. The public spaces are still generally in the coastal area and would have required further analysis, and the sensitivity around that space is, yep.
My second question was
involved in terms of new infrastructure projects. We certainly incorporated mobility access into the brief, but we'll check with the group, and certainly how we get from the car parks to the facility is a really important piece of the discussion that we've promised to have with them.
Were there any other questions? CEO, I have a couple. One was regarding the point that's made that budget limitations preclude the use of reused rock materials in the building design. Has there been discussion about what the cladding or the walls could be made of?
Through you, Mayor, and thank you for that. Heritage Victoria have expressed some views, and they're pretty keen for it to reflect the P1 huts as a kind of typology on the site that's already there. Otherwise, the coastal, I can't even remember what they're called now, building design guidelines for the coast suggest that we use very basic materials like timbers or even the corrugated iron and things like that. So we'll work through that as we get closer, and we will try and find other ways to reuse the crazy paving, all the rocks that are on there, and certainly we need to create space around the facility, and it might be able to be used in that location.
Thank you, CEO. Were there any further questions? All right. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Moving to item 13, governance and finance and the review of council policies. The recommendation is that council adopts the following revised policies as presented: CPO 30, asset disposal; CPO 39, discretionary reserves; and CPO 47, user fees and charges. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Tolhurst. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Any discussion? Councillor Tolhurst?
Just to thank Gihan and his team for his work on this in bringing the policies up to a standard that they need to be to reflect our economic environment and the business of council and support the work we do on a daily basis. So, as always, I know there weren't significant changes necessarily, but it's an important part of our role and the process. So thank you to you and your team. I'm very comfortable to endorse this.
Thank you, Councillor Tolhurst. Does anybody have anything they wish to add? All those in favour of the motion? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Moving to item 13.2, which is the expression of interest for an independent advisor for Council's CEO Employment and Remuneration Committee. The recommendation is that Council notes the public advertisement seeking the expressions of interest in becoming the borough's independent advisor to both the CEO Employment and Remuneration Advisory Committee and the CEO Recruitment Committee will commence on Monday the 3rd of March 2025. Do I have a mover for that motion? Thank you, Councillor Monaghan. Seconded, Councillor Tolhurst. Is there any discussion? Thank you, Councillor Griggar.
Just asking sort of what publications or how we're advertising this position out to the public?
My understanding is that we put it on our website, in the local papers, and I think there's another mechanism, either through MAB or something like that.
Which local paper?
He suggested there was an internal magazine or something to do with LGAs as well.
Yeah, through the MAB. Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Any further questions? All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Item 13.3. The 24-25 quarterly financial report as at 31st of December 2024. The recommendation is that Council notes the quarterly finance report to the 31st of December 2024, notes the update against the sustainable capacity, service performance and financial performance indicators, notes the statement by the Chief Executive Officer that the Chief Executive Officer, as required under Section 97(3) of the Local Government Act 2020, is of the opinion a revised budget is not required. And number 4, approves the allocation of the following additional funding allocations: $200,000 for 29 King Street building renewal works. The tenant, the Queenscliff Music Festival, QMF Proprietary Limited, will manage this project under council oversight. $200,000 to be provided to QMF Proprietary Limited. 2, $120,000 for the Ripview Beach Access Renewal Works. 3, $120,000 additional budget allocation for increased vegetation maintenance and management activities across the borough. And 4, $25,000 for costs for trialling temporary toilet facilities at 2 sites, Lock Street and Dog Beach, between February and April 2025. Do I have a mover for that, Councillor Tolhurst? Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Councillor Tolhurst?
I'd love to speak to the motion. So this council has really leapt into taking action on some priority areas that this report reflects. Extra vegetation work, toilet trials, and working with a key local organisation, the Queenscliff Music Festival, to deliver much needed asset improvements and support a local organisation working in our community for our community. The public toilet trial was an idea tabled and supported by the last council and delivered by this one. I see this as a really positive and practical step in terms of acting on our public toilet strategy and getting some concrete data to inform future decision making on permanent infrastructure. It's been long advocated for by many in the community, and I really look forward to seeing the feedback. And if you haven't done your business there, I encourage you to, and tell us what you think of it. The $120,000 for extra vegetation work around the borough was necessitated by storm damage and also supported by this council, who wanted to increase the schedule of maintenance ahead of a busy summer period. We've now actualised that budget allocation to respond to what is becoming recurrent storm events, so this won't be such an out-of-pocket expense and will be considered in the budget more holistically in years going forward. This report meets all the sustainability indicators, notably ongoing commitment to asset renewal, sufficient working capital and continually no borrowings. Despite persisting challenges to councils and to the economy, the borough is operating sustainably and is delivering for our community. So again, I happily endorse this report. Thank you, Gehan and team.
Thank you, Councillor Tolhurst. Does anybody else wish to speak to the motion? All those in favour? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Moving to item 14, the signing and sealing of documents. There were no reports to consider. Item 15, questions without notice. There were no questions without notice outstanding, but 15.2, do we have any questions without notice this evening? Councillor Cameron.
I would like to ask the question of the CEO. Can we please have an update on the project for the upgrade of the roundabouts in Hesse Street? When are they scheduled to commence, and what will the time frame be for the works? And will the roads have to be closed, and will traffic control be involved?
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. And through you, Mayor, so we're certainly scheduled to start on the 17th of March, so in a couple of weeks. We're just finalising the approvals with Department of Transport and Planning. The roads won't be closed, but for little periods of time as we bring equipment in and out. The project itself, we think will take 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a bit longer depending on what we find when we take out the bluestones. But we don't want it to run for too long. We certainly want it to be finished before Easter. And the last question was?
Traffic control.
Control. So we're just working through that with the contractor that we're working with, just to see what the extent of that will be. But there'll be some presence there to make sure that there's, certainly for pedestrians and those sorts of things, there's some safety that we're managing. Yep.
Thank you, CEO Gill, and thank you, Councillor Cameron. Are there any other questions without notice? Thank you. Item 16, the list of council meetings as listed. And item 17, we're going to close this session of the meeting now to consider confidential items. The time is 19:10. And this is in accordance with section 66(1), 66(2)A of the Local Government Act 2020. The meeting's closed to members of the public for the consideration of those confidential items as listed. Yes? Yep. For which one? Oh, I'm sorry. All right. Do I have a mover for the close of the meeting? Thank you, Councillor Tolhurst. Seconder? Thank you, Councillor Monahan. All those in favour? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right.